Today we've got Brad Morton here. Now, Brad was a partner in 7 Sonic restaurants and basically increased their sales 50%. And so today what we're going to be doing is going through his journey, how he made that happen, and basically how he got where he is today. Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Scott, and today we've got Brad Morton here. Now, Brad was a partner in 7 Sonic restaurants and basically increased their sales 50%. And so today what we're going to be doing is going through his journey, how he made that happen, and basically how he got where he is today. So, Brad, great to have you on. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Happy to do it.
Awesome. So let's dive in a little bit. So Sonics, how did you get started in that, or why that brand? Just give me the whole story on how you got there.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It was a little bit of an accident of sorts. I was running a breakfast restaurant that was successful, doing pretty well with one unit. I was a non-equity partner there. They called us an operator, and it was during the the Great Recession or whatever here in the U.S. And so we're talking 2012-ish, would have been about 6 years, 5 or 6 years there for me. And I just kind of felt like I was capped out where I was at. And I started getting this urge to, I wanted to be multiple unit. They had ceased all construction for where I was working, and this wasn't going to happen in the near future. And, I was kind of young and up and coming, and I wanted to also possibly have some ownership stakes, some real ownership in something. And funny enough, I was just kind of out tooling around on Monster one day, which was the venue of choice at that time to find a position. Just kind of wanted to see what was out there. And some guys had bought the Sonic drive-ins in my area. And so I applied there, and the rest is kind of history, as they say.
Okay, well, I mean, let's take a little bit of a look at that history. So did you start out just from the base position? Did you start out in management, or like what kind of, how did you get to go from employee into partner?
Yep, so it's very interesting. So it was really more of a lateral. So I was at a general manager operating partner level at the breakfast place. And, and there's a little bit of risk there. Anybody that's ever ran a breakfast restaurant, I mean, the restaurant closed at 2 p.m., right? So
yeah,
it's like, all right, I know I'm giving that up right out of the gate. And so essentially, like, I went with the recruiter that they had, I went and played golf with the recruiter. I think I was hired by the third hole, which was pretty interesting. I'm still not any good at golf, and I was really bad then, right? So that was pretty interesting. And so we just kind of got aligned on goals and what the future looked like there. And so I came over. I started with one, and funny enough, I had an option to come in as a general manager without putting up any funds. I mean, they were, I didn't realize how desperate they really were. There were 18 of them at the time. 2 of them were in a mall. There should never be a Sonic in a mall, in my opinion. But anyway, and so it was a little bit of a mess. And but in good faith, I went into the deal and cut them a check for 10 grand, which was a real stretch for me at the time. Full partnership. I never borrowed a dime. It came out of my savings account. And I was recently married too, by the way, not even a year into being married. And I bought in, and I thought, hey, let's burn the boats. Let's get all into this thing. And by the way, had never visited the store that I was getting ready to take over. Had never been.
So, okay, hold on a second. So you cut them a check for 10 grand, sight unseen. That's like buying a house on auction and just like hoping it's actually there. Okay, so I mean, I see a whole bunch of red flags there, but yeah, let's dive into this a little further. What kind of a situation did you walk into when you got there?
Yeah, so that's a good point, and I definitely want to answer. I'll just say this: like, if I knew what I know today about investing, the thing wasn't worth 10 cents, okay, and much less 10 grand. And so I did that because I wanted to, build some trust, and I wanted to come in, and I wanted some autonomy. I wanted people to leave me alone, let me do my thing. And so as I came into that arrangement, I just, it was, so here are some of the things I found. I found cockroaches living in the walls.
Oh God.
I found every piece of equipment broken, except there was one ice head working. And if you can imagine, like Sonic, even the low volume Sonic saw a ton of bags of ice, right? And in fact, some of my higher volume stores, I had 4 ice heads. So this one only had 1 ice head. I only had I had half a grill that worked, 2 fryers. You really need 3 or 4 to run a Sonic. The steamer was messed up. Just on and on and on, man. Nothing
I mean, I
worked.
hope that 10 grand went to some equipment upgrades.
Yeah, yeah. So funny enough about all that, and I did. When I say I had never been there, basically my training to run a Sonic was about 2 weeks.
Okay.
They sent me to a training store. Meanwhile, the director in the market, he had earned a trip, a company trip out. And we did this every year. It was a winter's convention, so he's out doing that. And I decided after work at the training store one day, I was going to swing by, just get an ice cream, and just kind of see how things were going. And what I found was an absolute mess. I saw car hops do it. I think we're selling drugs or something in the parking lot. Later on, I found out a couple of these guys were carrying around like switchblade knives. If it could go wrong, it was wrong in this place,
Yeah.
man. I have think of much more that could have been going wrong in there. But what I saw was opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. Now that would have scared most people, but I mean, you're 10 grand in, you're like, okay, well, I got to try and make this work. That was a big portion of my savings there. So, and this kind of reminds me of when I bought my first store. Is I was working there part-time and I got into it, and I had been there during the summer period. Now, our summer period was great. We had people that were coming in like after the bar rushes. We used to serve as line out the door, and I only really worked those shifts. I pretty much had only worked the busiest shifts. And I just thought it was busy like that all the time, right? So I'm buying this place and I'm getting these financials when I buy it that clearly were made up like on Excel, and none of it was accurate, because then I actually ran the store after 6 months. I look back and I'm like, that's nothing like what we're seeing right now. Like we were supposed to have a 25% profit margin, right? It was minus 25% when I get in there. Granted, I didn't really know what I was doing, but like those numbers shouldn't have varied that much. And so, but I get in there and nobody knows what they're doing. And, it was kind of a disaster. And I bought it in November, and our worst months of the year were December, January, February. So I was used to it being summertime busy. I had worked there during that, only worked the busiest shifts, lines out the door, things were great. And so then what ended up happening was when we get into November, all of a sudden it starts dying off. I mean, granted, it's cold, and our rent was about $5 grand a month. And then in December, our sales were just over 16,000. So all of a sudden, a third of our sales go to the rent. You're not making any money when things are like that. And funny enough, I literally, after I bought it, because I got a bank loan and had a little bit of extra cash and stuff like that, so I actually went out and I bought hockey equipment. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna have so much time now that I own this business. Yeah. I'm gonna be able to go and I'm gonna get back into playing hockey again. So I bought a couple grand of hockey equipment or whatever. And in the next 5 years, I proceeded to play hockey 2 times in the next 5 years. That's all I had time for. So yeah, you go in with these expectations. At least for you had been in the business, you had learned some stuff. You kind of knew, okay, what you were capable of, and so you could get into it and actually make some changes. But man, like I just remember that thinking everything's going to be one way and then just being surprised. So walk me through, like, just what was your gut instinct and what was going through your brain as soon as you arrived at that first location, saw everything you did?
Sure. So a couple of things there. One is, I found out later that my general partner, who at the time probably had around 80 Sonics in 3 or 4 markets, he had bought this market on a whim. Okay, he bought them on a fire sale. He bought them for less than the real estate value, and so I wasn't a partner in the real estate, and I was a partner in the business going forward. So his backup plan is, if the guys, he was giving it one more go. He'd owned them about 6 or 7 years, and we were giving it one more go with a whole new group of guys. And if we couldn't turn them, he was just going to sell the real estate, right? And so I found that out later. I had no idea how far up against the wall my back was at the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew I had to make this work. And so the first thing I observed, so I'm coming out of an environment where I was operating a $1.1 million one shift breakfast operation. Okay.
Yeah.
Of $6,000, $7,000 Saturdays, $5,000 Sundays, big weeks during furniture market, all kind of crazy stuff like this, right? And so coming out of that environment, and they're showing me that it scared me a little bit. The top line sales there were about 9,000-10,000 a week, and so you're talking $40,000 months. But we were in the we were in the off season. And I knew it was going to warm up and that kind of thing, but they were already behind on hiring when I hit the ground. And so, well, it had been unmanaged since December. Essentially, the new director took over right before Christmas. He walked in, the store was open Christmas Day. It was a mess, and he fired all the managers and let a team member kind of run it for a little bit. So that there was all of those things. And so the first thing I observe I come in for a lunch shift. I basically, when the director called me from his vacation, I said, "Hey man, listen, like I can appreciate wanting to get me trained here." I said, "But I think I should probably just go on down there." And so I just go on down there. I am a fan of, massive imperfect action. And so I didn't know every recipe. I didn't know how to build every burger, but they got charged for that. But one thing I did know was it's people sales profit. Okay. And I knew that in that business is a convenience business, and I knew we had to get fast, quick, because the first thing I observed were, I think the lunch tickets were an average of 25 minutes.
Oh, geez. In lunchtime.
At lunchtime. And so I also had the benefit of, knowing the breakfast restaurant that I worked at. They were about a quarter mile down the road, and I knew what kind of numbers that it did. And I did not expect us to get to those numbers, but those numbers were, I want to say that was right at a $2 million breakfast restaurant. Now, they were closer to the interstate. They had a way better reputation. It hadn't been run like crap for a decade, right? Yeah. So I knew we weren't going to get there, but I knew that the community would respond if it had better people and was ran a little bit better.
Okay. And so let's just walk through that. So obviously there's a million things to do to get this place up. There's a million problems to solve. So where did you start?
People.
All right. So like, what are some examples of things you did? Obviously, it's easy to say people, and I say this because our clients are like, oh yeah, like we hire people, we have some great people. There might be like 20% that are great, but a lot of people, oh yeah, we've got great people. So when I say that, what are some steps you took that made a difference that, maybe other people might not think of, or might think they have something good, and there's room to improve?
I spent around a week. I was probably there the whole time. Okay, so this place is open from 7 a.m. till 10 or something, and I'm there almost. Though I probably didn't close. I don't think I ever closed the Sonic, quite frankly. But I walked around in there, and I took notes on people, on who was there. I assessed who was there, and I also started firing up. And I don't hide this from my current clients, but I had a third party that would he would put ads on Career Builder, Monster, and Indeed. Now I had to pay for the ad spend, but for $300 a month he would refresh and do all the minutia. And I'm just like, hey, just start doing it. Like now hiring everybody, right? Like just start doing it. So my inbox is just blowing up with like all these applications. And basically I go through it. I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably 7-8 people behind headed into March because I'm in Central North Carolina. And so Central North Carolina can be, in March, you can have a snowstorm or it can be 75 and sunny. And if it's 75 and sunny, brother, they're coming to Sonic. I'm telling you right now, they're coming. And so I wanted to be ready. So I was 7 or 8 behind, and I had another, there were probably 8 people working there, and 6 of them needed to go. Okay. So I'm looking around, and so I also go out and I put up a sign on the marquee, open interviews 2 to 4 every Tuesday and Thursday. And But what was remarkable is that they had put a team member in charge that wasn't very good. But there was another team member there that the employees respected, that they looked up to. They came to her with every. It was just kind of the go-to person. She was just a natural leader.
Yeah.
And her appearance wasn't very good. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get like too far in the weeds there. And I could tell that she had been looked over for things because of that. And as I got to know her, she was about 24 years old and worked at Sonic since she was 18. Was an expert level team member and had some charisma. People looked up to her. She just didn't. Her appearance wasn't very good. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're running have one of those 75-degree days. It's starting to get busy. So what I'm doing, if I'm not focused on hiring, I'm focused on my drive-through. Like how fast can I move people, right? They had a car hop door, so if somebody gets like just a Diet Coke, I'm sending a car hop out with that to move the line. I'm doing all this stuff to get this drive-through time from what's probably 8 minutes. My goal was 2, and Sonic ain't set up to do 2. And so because I'm doing things like ordering a Prince Castle, holding it, and I'm ordering the Big Mac Daddy one, right? And we're gonna start moving from cook to order to assemble to order is what we're getting ready to start doing here, right?
Yeah.
So we start doing all those things. I'm replacing people, but I see this young lady I'm talking about. We're on a busier Friday night shift. I was always a believer that a general manager, and I was in that role, acting in that role, that they should work a Friday or Saturday night, at least into a swing shift, so they can see that side of the business and see those team members and that kind of thing. And so I'm up there working the business, and what I could immediately tell, and it was really hard. This occurred in my mind. I'm like, she's running this shift better than I could. So I just go over and start operating the drive-through, and she starts directing traffic everywhere else. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I can get her to do this, but I don't think I can turn this store without her. And so I go over and look at the payroll. This was a light bulb moment for me, and it probably changed my trajectory there, because I really was unsure if I was going to be able to do it until this point. But again, I knew I couldn't do it without her. So I look at the payroll, and she's making $9 an hour. Okay. And I pull her to the side, and I said, I tell you what, come in here tomorrow. There was a picture up front of what a Sonic team member and a Sonic manager can look like. And I said, I tell you what I'm going to do. And I already knew the answer. I said, how much do you make? She says, $9. I said, cool. I said, when you punch in tomorrow, you're going to make 14. And I said, and here's the deal, though. I need you to look like one of those pictures up there. I don't care which one. You need to be dressed. You need to be tightened up. And I was like, we'll worry about the rest later, but let's just start right there. And I said, you and I'll have a good career here together. If you'll just kind of get in here behind me, I said, I'll make a place for you here. And she trusted me with that, man. And she's still there today. She's in their busiest store, probably makes $175 a year. She's a full partner. But we went through that, man. And between it, and I taught her how to hire. But man, if I was breathing, I was either running a drive-through or hiring somebody on board.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that a little bit, because so many owners come to me and say, Andrew, I don't have time to hire. I don't have time to work on my people. I don't have time to look at those things. I'm just so busy trying to do it myself. And I think what I try to explain to them is that the reality is that let's just say you're in a pool and you're drowning, and you're spending all your time just to stay above water, keep your head above water. Well, the thing is, if you keep just trying to stay above water, you will always just keep trying to keep your head above water, right? Because nobody's coming to save you, right? There's no magical restaurant fairy that's going to come in there and do it for you and make it all work. But the reality is that there's a ladder like 2 feet away. And all you got to do is just redirect your effort even a little bit. And so instead of trying to pull yourself straight up, just move in an angle a little bit. You can still do that. Might be a little harder, but you're actually going to get somewhere good. And so many people just say, no, I can't do that. And what you're telling me you did is you just made that a priority. And obviously it wasn't going to be during your lunch period sitting there doing an interview. But hey, my mid-peaks, yeah, that's somewhere that I can get in there and do some interviewing. I can look at the people that I have right now. I can pick out the ones which I know can be successful. let me put a little bit of effort into these people that might have been looked over or might have been underserved. And you know what? Every business we go into, every business owner we talk to, there's always a couple people there that are like the diamonds in the rough. They might have 80% of what you're looking for, but they're missing this other little bit, and maybe they had been glanced over, but they're the people that keep it together. And those are the people, because there's often, so many owners tell me, Andrew, I don't have anyone on my team who would want to take on any more responsibility. And I say, have you asked?
Yeah.
They say, well, no, they just wouldn't. And I'm like, why don't you ask? Let's just find out. Because there's so many people there that want to take on more responsibility and actually do something with their lives. Because one thing I learned in my businesses too is that I needed to give people a trajectory that they could move forward in. So I got to a point where I had 3 locations, and I'm like, shit, I need to open more locations because I need to get jobs for these up and coming leaders. And I'm like, they're going to want to progress in their career. And if I don't grow faster, they're going to have nowhere to go and I'm going to lose them. So I knew that I needed to create a trajectory for people, because otherwise they would stay there, grow till their max, and then they would move somewhere else. The same thing that you did to get you into this in the beginning. You got to the top of where you could go. That wasn't the end of your road. Right. So then you just found another place to grow, right? Yep. And if we're not creating that for our restaurants, people will be leaving for other areas when maybe we could have used them and those talents in our business, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so we got the hiring in play. Your inbox is flowing. And tell me this too. I've often had people say, "Well, Andrew, I can't afford to fire the bad people because I don't have anyone else." What do you do in that scenario? Hey, real quick. What if you could identify thousands in hidden profits, optimize your food and labor costs, and know exactly what moves to make next to grow your restaurant business, all in less time than it takes to drink your morning coffee? That's exactly why I created the Restaurant Weekly Financial Tracker. It's free and available on the link that's in the description. Grab your free copy now and focus in on your restaurant's profitability today.
You know, I'm a believer of a few things. Listen, to say that I've never left someone on a schedule when they shouldn't have been would be false. Okay, but brother, it's been few and far in between. Yeah, and I'll say something else too. Like I have some fairly good kind of leadership and persuasion skills. That all came later. Okay, I was told in every environment that I was in as a single store partner, GM, operator, whatever you call it, that I ruled with an iron fist, and that was true. Okay.
Yeah.
People, but here's the thing: people didn't have to guess where they stood with me, right? Yeah. And I still think there's value in that, but it's. You can't do that in a multi-unit scenario because they'll do what you want while you're standing there. And when you get down the road, they'll give you an old one-finger salute, right? So you can't manage everybody that way, right?
Well, and it works so far. It's like that quote, what got you here won't get you there. In a one-unit environment, you can brute force your way to success. You can do most stuff yourself. But then you start to get into those other positions where you have to manage by conversation with managers, especially when you're talking about thinking people, right? It's different. Like I look at this and I'm like, man, running restaurants is extremely easy, right? You can go in and do I have to tell people, okay, make the product this way, mop the floor this way. And then I follow up to make sure they did it. And like it's really easy to train people on those things because they're simple things to do. You start training people on how to run schedules, on how to think and actually think logically, but then also think critically. Okay, now here's a new situation I've never done before. Now, how am I going to handle it? It's impossible to train them on every scenario that could ever come. So it gets harder at that point because then you can't just tell them exactly what to do because then they're just always going to rely on you or they're not going to do it and just tell you something different. You actually have to use your coaching abilities, and it's a whole different skill set to be able to do that because you have to get them to come up with the ideas. They have to think about how to execute it. And anyway, there's a whole trick to it. But the point is growing into a different leadership position for multiple units where you're managing managers, you're becoming an executive. Although most restaurant owners who get into that position don't realize that that's what an executive does, is they lead by their words and that's how they do the things. Whereas most people who are first getting to that level, you lead by your hands. You get in there, you do it yourself, and you make sure everyone else does it. And that's a recipe for success in one location for a time. If you're always intending on being there, you could do that for the rest of your life. But at a certain point, you're going to be like, okay, I actually want to take a day off. So then it requires a different skill set to put things in place. So no, I love that thought process. So tell me, aside from the people, so that's number one.
Yep.
So what are some other things that you did that helped turn around, obviously reducing your times, your wait times? So just walk me through a few other things that maybe someone who's in an environment right now, like, hey, I want to improve my business, whether it's speed of service, whether it's profitability, whether it's people. What are some things that you've done to help get to that level? And then we'll talk about the journey to multiple units after that.
Yeah, for sure. So I ran, I was told years ago, I came up through the TGI Friday system back when that was a great place to work. I came up through the East Division. It was their busiest division. There were like 90 restaurants in that. And I worked for some extremely talented leaders that have gone on to lead bigger things. And it was ingrained in me there that the restaurant business is people, sales, and profit. Okay. I learned in the breakfast business, because it was fast food as well, how to drive through. And what I learned is that this is a convenience business, and convenience and speed trumps everything. By the way, I'm going to hurt somebody's ears here, including food quality. Now, let me say this. It's like a 51-49 split. I'm not saying don't focus on food quality, but if you've got a choice between getting it out fast and getting, nobody's ever accused Sonic of serving the best hamburger, right? They haven't. So I'm already a third tier player. That's not where I compete. So I have to compete on speed, right?
Yeah.
And so I walk in there, and brother, I'm telling you, I lived on that drive-through. My headset was on from the minute I walked in the door. I was listening to every conversation. I moved. They weren't doing any, and I hate the word upsell. We started suggest selling. Okay, how can I make this better? How can I serve them? And I trained several kind of leads up there to be able to lead that in my absence, right? So I'm starting to think about, how do I back out slowly? I've got a list of things. Okay, I got this list. And if there's anything in there that I'm the only one that knows how to do, I'm teaching 2 other people how to do it that day. One thing that comes to mind in this restaurant, they had an old school Expo printer at the time, and nobody knew how to change the paper except me. Okay, so we were down into that kind of level of being granular, right? And so so I focused on people first. I got some great people that I thought could win. I went out and basically looked for anybody that couldn't quite make it at Chick-fil-A. I was trying to get them over at Sonic, right? I've never successfully lured anybody from Chick-fil-A. I've tried, but I'm looking for that level of team member, quite frankly. And so I'm going to bring in the Beta Club kids. I'm going to bring in the kids that play 2 or 3 sports, and I'm going to figure out how to juggle their schedules. And I'm going to get real loyal to this core group of about 6 to 8 people, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to go places. So I get in there, I start with a team. And so then I start with speed. Okay. And so I start thinking about, where are the friction points? Were these 25-minute tickets? And so a lot of it was training. So I'm probably getting them down in the 8-minute range by just doing things like we're supposed to, fixing equipment. I mean, there was a repairman there for 20 some days straight fixing something, right? Whaley Food Service is still counting still folding the bills from my days at Sonic. Okay. Let me just tell you. And so and if you see a Whaley van, nothing against them, but if you see them pull in your parking lot, get your wallet ready is the only thing. And Taylor ice cream machines. And by the way, got rid of all those, went to Electro-Freeze. Okay. So anyway, I'm fixing equipment. I'm removing friction points. I'm ordering Prince Castle units, replacing bun toasters. And basically, we just set up some standards. Like, I put some PARs in place for those things. So we get the speed. So with speed comes sales, right?
Yep.
And meanwhile, I'm doing all the truck orders. And back then, man, the pressures weren't, we're talking 2012 to 2016-ish kind of time frame. You could run a 20 or 22% food cost at Sonic, food and paper, brother, by the way, because a lot of what you're selling is the stuff that goes in the ice cream machine, the mix, right? You're selling a lot, and that stuff was cheap. It was just half and half, and water, a lot of it, right? And then you're selling, or cream, or whatever goes in it, sugar, I guess. And then you're selling, it's not like we're selling ribeye steak in there, right?
Yep.
I did things that, here was something else I did. And so when I talk to owners today, if you're in a franchise system, they want you to succeed, but on the sales side, right? They get paid on sales, you get paid on profit. So I did some things that Sonic didn't like they had these fancy cartons and stuff. I got rid of all that stuff, man. My mozzarella sticks went in a paper, like a paper bag. I was asking forgiveness, not permission. Okay? And so I'm sending stuff out. So we're working on people, sales, profit. The drive-through's moving. Okay, we're using less packaging. We are. I'm transferring inventory to other stores where it made sense. Hey, you need a case because you've never seen such a stockpile that I inherited of stuff you didn't need, like enough ranch to last for 4 years. And I'm like, hey, can you use a case? Like I'm just getting rid of stuff, right? Getting credit.
Yeah.
I'm holding. I had a vendor that was stealing, so I switched bread vendors. I caught him going out to the truck, wheeling the bread in, coming back with the same thing, and leaving me an envelope. It was crazy, man. The stuff that I caught. But it just kind of all came together. But the key to it, as we were talking about earlier, was having people in place so I could focus on those things.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it this way. So there's a theory of constraints, which is something that Alex Hormozy talks about, which is big in the coaching and info space. So the theory of constraints is that just picture a pipe, right? Just picture you're a plumber and there's a big pipe, and there might be this one point in the pipe where it's smaller than the rest, right? Mm-hmm. And so you could go and you could make the rest of the pipe bigger before that. After it, you could do whatever you can make it 5 times the size before you get to that little place where it's a little tighter and not as much is going through. And no matter how much you work on those other areas, stuff is still not going to pass through that little tiny area any faster, right? No, so what you have to do is you should always be working on where the constraint is in the business, right? Because then if you fix that, then there's going to be a lot more flow through, and then you're going to find the next constraint and work on that. And what I see so many owners do is they end up working on all of the wrong things at the wrong time. And so what you're saying, and again, which follows exactly the stuff that we teach people, is starting with the people is a huge thing, because once you have the right people, you can then move on and tackle all the other challenges. And having the right people just helps you do all of those other things, right? And so one thing I loved that you said next was obviously working on the speed. Now, that comes a part of it where you just need to get back to the standard. But you aggressively targeted that speed, and you said, okay, hey, we are here, and I want to go here. And if we do that, here is going to be the thing that's going to happen, which is going to bring us more sales, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what you did, is you selected just a couple of key things, and you put all of your effort, all of your discretionary effort into that, right? Because there's obviously other things you have to do. It's not like you just stopped working one day and only focused on hiring, but you just put any spare time you had on solving that. And another thing that I loved that you said was, if there was anything that only you knew how to do it, you were training people as you went, right? So anytime that you're doing something, like, and I told my managers this too, if you have to fill a shift and you're closing down the restaurant or opening the restaurant, you better damn well have someone there training, because your time is too expensive for you just to be an overpaid frontline worker. You better be training someone so that you never get in that place again. That was always my rule. If you're going to do it, there damn well be a double purpose to what you're doing, because then at least it makes sense. Because we never want to be doing anything once for the sake of doing it once. We want to think about leverage, right? How we can do one thing and have it have multiple different effects later on. So I love that you were talking about that. And so now we've got the speed. Now let's talk about the profit. Obviously, when sales comes up, that does help profit, but I'm sure you've known this, is that there are also restaurants out there that have huge top lines that can also still have nothing left at the end of the year, or the day, or the month, or whatever period you have. I remember we worked with a client that was like $4 million in sales. They still lost $500,000 a year. So most people think, oh, if I just have more sales, it solves everything. I will say that having more sales solves most things, but not everything. It makes a lot of things easier, but not everything.
Well, sales can cover up a lot of evils. Okay. Yeah. I can show you some busy restaurants that are just ran like hell. I mean, it's just like, you have to, it's a crutch sometimes. And then when, so that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, so on the profitability side, I just looked for areas where there was a lot of fat. And so I set a sales per man hour goal right out of the gate, and so when I measured that, I want to see one bead of sweat. That's a subjective way to measure it, but I want to see I want guys with one beat, and I mean from the open to the close. Like if you come in, like it doesn't take an hour and a half to open up a Sonic. You can open one in 20 minutes if the close was good. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you hustle, right? And so I was going through proving these processes. And the other thing I did is kind of that core group of 6 to 8. They were all paid well. They were all paid Chick-fil-A money or better. Okay.
Okay.
Well, they didn't ask. Like, I just went to them and I'm like, hey, here's what's going to happen. And the expectation is going to increase. Right. And so there's going to be like less people. There's going to be this. And then so some other unique things that I did at the time, car hops, the guys that had the restaurants before me, they paid all the car hops $7.25 because they didn't want to. First of all, Sonic's system wouldn't allow you to leave credit card tips at the time. They had a terrible, it's the worst credit card system. It's called Pays, the worst thing I've ever seen. And when it got cloudy, it would cut off and it wouldn't allow you to tip. It was just bad. But they were contractually obligated. So I did some more things that Sonic didn't like. I went and got a handheld credit card machine that would allow me to process tips. And then I set my car hops down and I took them all to, I think, $5 an hour.
Okay.
And it wasn't popular at first. A couple of them left, and that was fine. It was addition by subtraction because I'm hiring every day and I'm bringing people on with this new expectation. And I'm finding people that understand their money's out there at the car. Their money is checking back on people. Their money is because Sonic, the other thing, the competitive advantage that traditional Sonics have is Sonic is an experience. They've got the old music. They got people on roller skates. That was another thing. Part of Sonic's culture is to have skating car hops. There was nobody skating when I got there. I got all my car hops on skates. It was required. And so we were on skates. We were having fun. I provided the atmosphere out on the lot. They were paid less by me, but making more because of that. So that made my labor model incredibly profitable. From the food side, I was doing the orders. I was training other people how to do the orders. I was meeting with my U.S. foods rep on a regular basis, trying to see where we could cut some corners or where I could get a deal or whatever that looked like. So I was hitting it on all edges there, and that resulted in. And then I had budgets. I had repair budgets. I had once we kind of got through the initial equipment purchases and that kind of stuff, and some of that I was able to put on a spread with my general partner, which was favorable financing for that. So that was okay. And just clean the place up, man, and get to work. Like, that was it.
Yeah. So there's a couple points I want to bring out too. So one thing that you said there is when you were giving raises to people, I want to clarify this because I'm sure we've all had people that came up to us and said, Hey, Andrew, I want to get a raise. I want to get more money. And if you give me more money, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do more once I get that money. And in a lot of cases, that never materializes. If I had agreed to it, I tried that a few times. And then sometimes people said, hey, I need a raise. And I said, well, hey, you need to do this. You need to do this. You need to do this before I'm going to give you that raise. And sure enough, they did that right until they got their raise and then went right back to the same habits they had before. So what I love about what you said is that often the people I love to give raises to are the people that do not ask, but prove their value with their work. And so you have someone that's in that business that is running circles around everyone else, but they're getting paid the same wage as everyone else. They're not asking you for a raise. But if you anticipate that and say, hey, I think you're worth more than that, and proactively do it, right? It doesn't help you in the short term because you're increasing their wage, but it will help you in the long term because they are then going to be that standard that people measure up to, and they will typically stay longer, be happier, and you'll have fewer issues with them because they feel valued. I think that can't be understated. So that's one thing I love what you said there. And then another thing is simply having some budgets. You ask most restaurant owners today, hey, what's your budgeted expense for repair and maintenance? They're going to say, oh, I don't know. When something breaks, I fix it, right? And so there's not a whole lot of preventative maintenance going on. Or, oh, hey, what's your ideal food cost based on your menu mix? And they're going to say, well, I don't know, because they don't know what their cost should be. They don't know what their targets should be. And so that is something that if you don't know what it should be, it's like you were on a ship without a compass, without a map, and you're just hoping that you're going to get somewhere where you're sure going to get somewhere, but who knows where the hell you're going to get, right? You could end up in Taiwan or England or the edge of the earth, the Arctic. I don't know. Whatever that might be, you just don't know. And so we need to both have a destination, and we also need to have a compass, and we need to be able to figure out where the hell we are in relation to where we're trying to go. So I prefer GPSs personally, but that's kind of what I see so many restaurant owners do. And so once you're able to get in there, fix the major holes, then let's make this a tight running ship. And I just love that movement there. Okay, so we've covered that. Now just take us through going from 1 then into 7. Now, how did that happen?
So I've described this 1 year experience in great detail, and the truth is that I only had one for about 120 days.
Okay.
The 90-day mark in, it was my second month in the row of 20% profits to the bottom line. First month was a little rough. We were fixing equipment, all that kind of stuff. And once they kind of saw evidence of that, and by the way, at this point, I had got my time in the restaurant down. I was still working 12 to 8 on Friday, and I would probably open up on Monday or Tuesday just to keep an eye on lunch. But other than that, brother, I was swinging by there with golf clubs in the back of my truck, grabbing the deposit on the way to the bank, right?
So let's stop there for a second. How long did you say that timeline was?
It was about 120 days.
So 120 days, so that's basically 4 months-ish. And so most people out there who are struggling with some of the same issues that you are probably thinking, oh my God, there's no way I can make a turnaround in a year or in what they've probably been struggling this for years, plural years. And what you're saying is that when you applied the right tactics at the right times, you're actually able to make a turnaround literally in 4 months. And I say that because I want to break the conception, because people think, oh, nobody wants to work anymore. It's impossible to find good help. Oh, it's impossible to make more than 5% profit with a restaurant. Some people think it's even impossible to make any money with a restaurant. And they just don't understand that it is possible. They just don't do the right things. And if they knew what to do and executed it properly, their business would be in a whole different place. And that's, I think, the message that I try and teach everybody, because it is possible. I've done it. You've done it. There's hundreds of other people that have done it. I would argue hundreds of thousands of people that have done it over their lifetimes. So why is it that you and your business is so screwed that it can never be fixed? I don't think that that's the case. I think that most owners just don't have the knowledge on what to do and the habits of a successful owner. And when they don't have either of those things, they're bound to keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. But once they change what they do to the right things and do it properly, miracles can happen. And so thank you for saying that. That was beautiful. So, okay, 120 days, you got your golf clubs and they're seeing some solid profits. You're proving, what you can do. So what happens then?
Yep. So we've got that going on, and they hadn't even, so there was 18 in the market. They were in the process of closing the 2 mall stores, and there were, they hadn't even finished filling all of their open roles. And there was an opportunity to have 6 of these. So I would move from a 20% partner in 1 to a 10% partner in 6. Is how this would work. Now with that came another round of buy-in, right? And so that was pretty interesting. I did come up with the money. I had to put a second on my house. So my back. So now I've created I've got my income in the one store back up to almost where it was at the breakfast restaurant. Not quite. Okay.
Yeah.
And now, so, things are starting to feel good at home again. But now there's this opportunity to have 6. And I'm thinking, all right, well, if I don't do it, they'll find somebody to do it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I go put a second on the house, and off we go, right? And so now this was they weren't all as bad as the one that I took over, but they were all around a D or an F mark. Some of them had a couple better locations. Some of them were 2 hours away in places where, most of North Carolina doesn't get snow on a regular basis, but a couple of them were kind of in the foothills where they do. And so you get less warm weather days. And there was a whole bunch of new stuff I had to learn here. And keep in mind, the biggest learning curve there wasn't the systems or the financial or how to turn over a store. The biggest curve was, now I've got to go recruit leaders for these stores. And I've been ruling with an iron fist, and that ain't gonna work anymore. So there was some leadership development on my side, which they invested in me for that. They sent me to some training and some different things to kind of take that edge off a little bit. Keep your passion, but think about the way that you present, right? That kind of thing. And so there was a little bit of work done there. And basically, I called my guy, man. That was so. Let's see. Of those 6. There were 2 of them that were unmanaged. So the game with the guys that had them before me, what they would do, they would put the guys on bonus programs, but they wouldn't explain them. And so the volume would be there in the summer. And so the GMs would make the bonus in the summer. And then when the October checks started hitting and they couldn't pay their bills, they would just quit. And the guys would leave the stores unmanaged for the winter is what would happen. So it would never grow. The thing would never grow. And so essentially what I did is I started putting ads out for, and I was a little bit, I was talking about, hey, multi-unit opportunities available and partner opportunities. So I made it, I puffed it up a little bit. I wasn't deceitful because those opportunities were available for somebody that not right that minute, but we're a big organization, so you could find some of that. But what it allowed me to do is get guys that like myself that were just fishing around, like better quality guys than we deserve. Okay. And then there's some salesmanship here. So the way that I actually staffed these stores, I didn't have the ability to match their pay, as a Domino's district manager. Okay. But what I could do is I could provide them a better environment. I could talk to them about their goals. I was starting these team building and I was starting to teach them all these things. But what I could do is what I would basically do is if they were, let's just say they were making $60,000 at Domino's, the package I could put them on would be like a $30,000 base, but an opportunity to make 90. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now that's not for everybody. I'd say that my success rate was about 20%. But of the 7, I eventually, because I ended up getting 7 restaurants by the end. And of my 7, 5 of them, my understanding is 5 of them are still there today. And I hadn't been involved in that since probably 2017.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so then there's a lot of learning on your part. But again, going through that same cycle, let's find the people. Let's find the top talent. And let's find a way to make it make sense for them and where you guys both win as a part of it. So, no, I think that's a great evolution in the journey. And so I think for a lot of owners out there who are struggling with sometimes just the basics. How do I get the right people? How do I make my business run without me? How do I actually get the profits up? It's all possible. And I think that a lot of cases, we're just trying to do the same things over and over again, where you have to come in and you're going to have to shift what you're doing. You're going to have to find ways to make it work. You're going to have to be able to be resourceful. You're going to have to come in and get your hands dirty a little bit too, but only to the point where you're also prepping for a exit at the same time. And when I mean an exit, I don't mean full abdication, like you have someone else run it and you never come check in again, but you shouldn't be the one on the front lines. And I think that's a piece that I try to pass on to everybody. You need to be there to ensure that everything happens, or you need someone who is going to be there to do that in your absence. But you shouldn't be the one. You shouldn't be the only one in your business that knows how to do everything. You shouldn't be the key that makes everything run in your business, the glue that holds it all together, because that's not a business. That is basically a prison.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah, well, and the one thing we've been touching on here that I haven't said directly is the guest experience will never exceed the employee experience. Okay? So whether that's at the team member level or the manager level or the GM level, like everybody, and these big companies, IBM, Amazon, they do these multi-million-dollar surveys. And money is never number one. It's always this usually something like, does somebody care about me at work or my development? Some combination of those things, right? It's usually number one and number two. Yep. And the money's got to be right. You got to be competitive. And what I wanted to establish an environment where we could exceed what you would, let's just take Chick-fil-A out of it, but anywhere besides that, we could exceed. I was successful going to find the best Taco Bell manager there was. Okay, in my lower volume units. I was successful in pulling over a guy that used to oversee 75 Domino's. Okay. I was, and I when I got those people, I got shoulder to shoulder with them in the store. and showed them the way, right? We cut through all the franchise BS, threw most of that stuff in the garbage, and we just started running restaurants, right? But I would tell them, and when you hire general managers, it should be a 5 to 7 year decision, or operating partners in some of these cases. And I would tell them, hey, I want to grow old together. Okay, I want to spend Christmas with you. And when I say that, I don't mean Christmas Day. I mean we're talking about a Christmas party. And so we would do all these things, and we would have monthly meetings where we would get together and we would talk about people's sales and profit as a market. And then what we would do, that would be the morning. I would have lunch catered in, Jimmy John's or something like that. And then we would go to play putt, bowl, Top Golf. Top Golf wasn't around, but yeah, it's anything social like that. And that was totally voluntary, but most of them hung around, and we got to be, we were competitive within that group, but we would share information freely, and it got to be a really good environment there.
Okay. And so the culmination of all of this is you took what the average unit volume was. What'd you say it was? So it went from, I'm fuzzy on the numbers, but
it was around 750. And by the way, it was greatly skewed because I had a $2 million store. My 7th store that I added later was a $2 million unit in front of a university. It's 24-hour, by the way, which is the only time I've ever operated a 24-hour. But it came with, I also had to take a $525,000 unit that we were in a bad lease with. So I had to take them kind of, it was a package deal. They realigned and let me try to change partnerships at that time. So to get the big, so I had to do all that. And so I had to fix, it was just a new set of problems, another set of problems is all it was. But yeah, it's had to be creative.
Yeah, so you took it from where to where in your time there?
The market volume was around 750-ish when I inherited, and then was around 1.1. And in all fairness to that, there was some physical remodels involved where we added dining rooms, but I had to pony up on those. And the average we were getting them done for about $250 because you're basically just kind of bricking in the patio. Yeah. So just imagine, I don't know, building a 1,300 square foot house or something is about like what it would be. And so, we would restrike the parking lots, but we treated those like grand openings, quite frankly. We closed the store for a week, retrain all the staff, bring in trainers from our organization that we kept the corporate people out. We told them kick rocks and do kind of these things out of the way, right?
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, man, it's been a pleasure having you here and talking through a little bit of that. And yeah, I know there's so much more to dive into, but I think this is a great chat today. And some actionable tips for people that are out there wanting to improve their restaurants, man. So I appreciate you being here, and we'll see you again soon.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. And we'll talk soon.
All right. This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description, and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.